What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Clowns podcast. I'm your host, Meej, and today we're going to be talking about current 49ers wide receiver Deebo Samuel and all the latest news surrounding him. But before we begin, I'm going to quickly ask you to leave a like, subscribe if you wish, and please comment, as I love interacting with all the fans out there. And I say we jump right in. So Deebo Samuel has not rescinded his trade request despite showing up for mandatory minicamp. Now, This appears as a positive sign that they could be coming closer to a deal, or at least agreeing that he will be on the 49ers this season. But the fact that he hasn't taken the trade request away scares me a little bit for his fate on the 49ers. I do overall think he will be on the 49ers this season, and I love him despite, no matter where he goes. I feel like he's going to be an excellent pick for fantasy football, but it's tough not to speculate despite him being on the 49ers still this deep into the offseason. But the GM said that he would be a fool to trade him, and I also agree with that. But there's also things that come with that if he doesn't re-sign with them, or at least get an extension next season, then they lost him and got nothing for him. And I think that's a big problem, because they could probably get quite the package for Deebo Samuel, who had a terrific season last year, posting up multiple touchdowns on the ground and through the air, and being the overall power of that San Francisco offense. And I honestly thought last year that Ayuk was going to have that role, but it turned out to be Deebo Samuel, and he flew with it. So my overall thoughts on this are that he's probably going to remain with the 49ers this season, but if he doesn't, I'm going to list off a few teams where I think that he could potentially end up. And the first one is obviously the New York Jets. They've already kicked tires earlier in the offseason, but things have since quieted down. The Jets are crafting quite the formidable offense, I would say. I think that Deebo Samuel would be an electric pickup for that team, and they could actually go somewhere with a player like Deebo Samuel at their wide receiver position to help propel him and the newcomer Breece Hall and just an overall probably pretty solid backfield this season. But it's just going to be an interesting thing to see. I think that him on the Jets would actually be pretty solid for his fantasy value, as he would be the number one player on that team's offense. The next team I would like to talk about is the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, since Tyreek Hill has left, they do not have that solid cut wide receiver one on that team. Tyreek Hill is obviously a tremendous loss to that team. Patrick Mahomes and him had unbelievable chemistry. Obviously, they still have Travis Kelce, who is the best tight end in the league by a long shot, and I think he's going to deliver quite the fantasy season this year, as he always does. But I think that Deebo Samuel on that team would be an amazing add for that offense as a whole. It would make me feel confident picking Patrick Mahomes in the first round again, because he has since dropped, and I don't want to say tremendously, but he's definitely slid down the rankings after Tyreek Hill's departure. Deebo Samuel on the Chiefs would be absolutely insane. I think that the league would probably explode, but I think that it fits there, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs kick tires. And the final team that I want to mention is going to be the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Baltimore Ravens are already a fantastic team on both sides of the ball, and I'm going to take it off from there, predicting that Lamar Jackson is going to have a top 3 fantasy quarterback season, and I'm really excited to see what he does this year, and I'm definitely hot on Lamar Jackson this season. But going back to the fact that if they could get Deebo Samuel on that team, I think that the Ravens would probably be up there for the Super Bowl favorite, if not the Super Bowl favorite, with Deebo Samuel. They have an interesting trio of running backs. You know, there was a weird situation last year. We're hoping that J.K. Dobbins can potentially return to his full potential. Obviously, that injury, right around a year ago today, actually, was pretty tough for that team. They took a big loss with J.K. Dobbins going down. They also lost Gus Edwards and actually a couple other guys to injury from that backfield. And it just ended up being a pretty weird fantasy situation. No one was really providing too much value. But I think that the Ravens are going to have... I like all Ravens players this year. I think Mark Andrews is valued a little too highly, but I think if Deebo Samuel was potentially to go on that team, that the Ravens would have probably the best offense in the league, just because Deebo Samuel can do it both through the ground and through the air, and the Ravens already have a fantastic run game with Lamar Jackson at quarterback and the return of J.K. Dobbins. That's going to do it for today's video. I'm going to keep it a little short today. Obviously, we were focusing mainly on one player and the offenses that could potentially be impacted by him joining that team. So I'm going to quickly ask everyone to leave a like if you haven't already, and I appreciate you guys tuning in for the video. If you want to comment what you guys think maybe a good destination would be, I would appreciate that, and I'll respond to as many comments as I can. If you'd subscribe, I'd really appreciate that as well, and I'm going to catch you in the next one. Take it easy.